Gun, episode 90. I'm Schuyler Callihan, and that is the signal caller, Jed Drenning. And it's Phil Friday, which means we're this much closer to football here this weekend. West Virginia will be taking on Texas Tech. And here in just a moment, we will be talking to college football's best. That is Phil Steele. We'll talk some top 25 matchups, Big 12, and West Virginia, Texas Tech, of course. But before we get into that, we're going to first, thank you to BetOnline for sponsoring this episode of In the Gun. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Jed, last week we made our picks for the Backyard Brawl, and we were joking about it before we got into this because one of them was which quarterback was going to throw for the most yards, Garrett Green or Phil Jurkovec. And Jurkovec played the whole game. Garrett Green only played a series and 2 plays, yet he barely won this thing. I mean, you would have thought he would have won this thing going away, but that's not necessarily the case. He had a rough day at the ballpark, 8 of 20, had 3 picks. I think he fished with, 81 passing yards or something like that?
81 yards. Jurkovec threw for 81, and obviously Garrett left the game, snapped 5, whatever it might have been. And, something tells me that Garrett Green was going to throw for more than 81 yards. The downfield concepts that we had built into the game plan with him. But so we both missed that one. Or excuse me, you got that one right. You picked Jurkovec, Garrett. And we also picked, and this was kind of interesting, we said last year in Pittsburgh, it was kind of a tale of 2 halves. You had 69 total points scored, but it was 10-10 at the half last year. Meanwhile, the teams blew up for 49 points in the second half. So we tried to pick which half will have more points this year. Did we both go with the second half?
I think we did. Yeah, I know I did. I'm not sure which one.
I think I did too.
I think you did second half.
So at the half, West Virginia was up 7-6. So that's 13 total points. The second half, the Mountaineers shut Pitt out 10-0. So the first half had more points. So we missed that one. And then we went with the over under 150 rush yards by West Virginia. West Virginia, 151? We both over. So with a hair on our chinny chin, we both went over. So that's the only one I hit, and I barely hit it. But interesting. We're gonna double back after we have Phil on in that closing segment. We're looking at some for the Texas Tech matchup. Again, we're trying to carve these so they uniquely fit that individual game that week in our own little in-house handicapping machine here. So
yeah, I honestly, it was so funny because I was thinking during the game, it was like 7-3 at one point or 7-6 first half, and I'm like, oh yes, that bet that I picked the over in the second half there, I'm gonna fly past that. Like, there's no way I'm not gonna hit that. What do you know? We don't even get there. So it is what it is. So we're not gonna keep you waiting any longer. We're gonna get right to Phil right after this break. And again, we're tossing Big 12 top 25, West Virginia, Texas Tech, all right here coming up around the corner on In the Gun.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less. In Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
For more West Virginia Mountaineer football content, be sure to follow us on Twitter at In the Gun Podcast.
All right, here we go. It is Phil Friday with Phil Steele. You can get his magazine at Books A Million and Barnes & Noble. Phil, thank you for joining us again. We've got a lot of really good games. Me and Jed had a hard time really putting this list together to get your take on some of these, but we'll just fly right on into it. We'll start with an ACC matchup, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but Florida State favored on the road at Clemson. How about this? Florida State obviously had the near loss last week. They survived, but what do you think about this matchup? Can Florida State go into Death Valley there and pull out a win?
Well, I'll tell you, the majority of the people think Florida State is by far the best team in the ACC, but I think Clemson's a little under the weeds right here. And, Clemson's lost a grand total of one home game the last 6 years in Death Valley, one.
Wow.
You go back to that Duke game, they had a 29-17 first down edge. They got down inside the 5-yard line like 3 times and didn't score. It was just a game where everything that could go wrong went wrong. And last week, FAU scores on a halfback option pass in the final minutes of the game against the backups to make it 48-14. As long as Cade Klubnik does not turn the ball over, I think they have the defense that can contain Florida State here. They have an offense with Shipley and Maffa. I think actually Clemson wins this one at home, and they're going to be pretty happy they're in the underdog role for this, I think. Only one home loss in the last 6 years. I like Clemson too, and I'm putting this in air quotes, guys, pull the upset.
Let's jump out west, Phil. Everything Dion does is a story, and he's taking his Buffaloes out to Eugene to face Dan Lanning's Oregon Ducks. And it wasn't that long ago Dan Lanning was throwing a bit of shade. So top 20 matchup here. How do you see this unfolding?
When it comes to the Pac-12, everybody's talking about USC and Washington, but I think Oregon's playing the best of the teams right now. You got Bo Nix at quarterback. You got Autzen Stadium, which is just unbelievable. They never lose there. And with Colorado, I tell you what, a great story. And Shedeur Sanders is fantastic. But look at their line. I mean, their offensive line, they're averaging 2 yards per carry. They're giving up 16 sacks, and that's because Shedeur Sanders is avoiding sacks. And the defense has given up 5 yards per carry. Oregon's going to be able to run the football. Oregon's going to be able to put pressure on the quarterback. And Colorado just lost their best offensive player, Travis Hunter, and their best defensive player, Travis Hunter. Yeah, he's the same guy. Now they're trying to figure out who the cornerback is to cover the receiving core. They're going to try to, Xavier Weaver's one guy, Shedeur Sanders is one guy, but Oregon dominates the line of scrimmage and wins this thing by more than 3 touchdowns. I like the Ducks big here.
Going over to the SEC, a top 15 matchup, number 15 Ole Miss at number 13 Alabama, and Ole Miss ran a tick under 300 yards last week against Georgia Tech, ran for 299. Alabama's got a little bit of a quarterback issue, it seems. They only beat South Florida last week 17-3. Can Alabama fall to 2-2 here, Phil?
This would be my last test with the Tide. They need to pass this one. If they don't, they're headed for a long, long season. But don't be surprised if after this game, everybody's back on the Tide bandwagon, and they'd still be the favorites to win the West. I think putting Jalen Milroe is a good thing. The offensive line has struggled. They've given up 5 sacks each of the last 2 weeks. And if you follow Ole Miss games the last 2 weeks, they've sort of been misleading finals. You go back to that Tulane game. Mississippi's up by 7 points late in the game, score a couple of late scores, win by 17. Georgia Tech's a 7-point game in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden, boom, they score 3 touchdowns, including one very late after an onside kick to win it by 25. I haven't been blown away by Ole Miss so far this year. I think Alabama's in the circle the wagons game at home. I like the move back to Milroe, the more mobile quarterback. I'm going to take the Tide by more than a touchdown at home here.
Let's jump back out to the Pac-12, Phil. How about the Left Behind Bowl, where you have ranked Oregon State and ranked Washington? Is this kind of the de facto Pac-2 championship game? What do you see playing out here?
Yeah, it is the Pac-2 championship game. And this one I'm torn on, guys. Got to be honest with you. I think Oregon State's the better team. They've got the run game. They've got the defense. DJ Uiagalelei is a decent quarterback. Not a great quarterback, but a good quarterback. And really what was missing. But they don't play as well on the road. Washington State is playing really well. And the Palouse is a tough place to play. Ask Wisconsin. They beat Wisconsin, which is a very good team. At home this year. They went on the road and thumped Colorado State, the same team Colorado struggled with. So I think this game is a pure toss-up in my mind. Washington State's at home, has a shot, but this is one where I'm just going to have the popcorn, be watching it, and take in these two teams. But it'll be a great Pac-2 championship game.
I love the Pac-2. Ohio State at Notre Dame. If you look at the ESPN Football Power Index, they have the Buckeyes giving them a 65% chance to win this game. I don't know if I trust those numbers. I'm more interested to hear what your computers say about this, Phil, because I think Notre Dame's the better football team.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think the wrong team's favored here. I mean, the one area Ohio State has the advantage is wide receiver. They've got the most explosive wide receivers. Notre Dame has decent receivers, but nothing compared to Ohio State. However, let's look at the running backs. I'll take Estime and Love against Henderson and Trainum. Let's take a look at the offensive line. I feel Notre Dame's got the superior offensive line. Ohio State hasn't really been tested. Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, Indiana, they will get the test in South Bend. Defensively, I'm going to give a slight edge to Notre Dame here, very slight edge. Special teams, I'm going to give the edge to Notre Dame. And then what's the position I'm missing? Oh, quarterback. I'm going to give a large edge to Notre Dame here. Sam Hartman, I feel, is a Heisman candidate, 13-0 ratio, a veteran, been in every big game out there. Kyle McCord last week took on a weak Western Kentucky defense and looked great. But this will be his first real road test. I know they played at Indiana, but Ohio State had the crowd edge. This is the first real road test. You've got a young quarterback against Sam Hartman. I'm taking Notre Dame to win this one outright.
Let's head back to stay in the Big Ten, I should say, Phil. And what I want to ask you about is under the lights in Happy Valley. Iowa's still trying to get things right offensively. Seemed to click a little bit on that side of the ball against Western Michigan. Penn State survived their test at Illinois. How do you see things unfolding at Beaver Stadium?
Yeah, well, the key last week for Penn State covering against Illinois was the turnovers. Altmaier threw 5 interceptions. You look at the first downs, they were even at 20. Penn State only had like a 29-yard edge in the game, but the 5 turnovers really helped them win that game by 17. So not blown away, but I expected Illinois to give them a game, and they did. Now with Iowa, the key is going to be, can they stay in this game? Because if they're playing from behind, playing catch-up, they're in trouble. They did lose their tight end, Luke Lachey. He's out for the year. They are down their top 2 running backs. But last week, they had their third-string running back come in, and Williams rushed for 145 yards. They've got an improving offensive line. Cade McNamara has not looked great. I expect him to improve as the season goes on, but it's a Phil Parker defense. It's an Iowa special teams. I think they can, as long as they stay in the game, this will be a tight ball game. But like I said, if Penn State was to get, let's say, a couple of turnovers like last week and all of a sudden get up by 14, then it could get ugly. But I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I'm leaning with Iowa to keep this one closer than expected.
Yeah, Phil, let's turn the page over to the Big 12 slate here. And let's start here with Oklahoma at Cincinnati. Obviously, Cincinnati tripped up last week in overtime against Miami of Ohio. We actually talked about it here on the show about this could be a look-ahead situation. That's exactly what happened. Is this an opportunity for Cincinnati? Do you feel like they can get back on track and give Oklahoma a serious push here in their first Big 12 game?
They're going to give it a shot, but this is a really good Oklahoma team right now. In fact, I did my average game grades, and right now they're coming up number 7 in the country. They're outgaining opponents by 245 yards per game. That offense looks explosive, and I think the offense will have success here at Cincinnati. They're going to be prepared. It's a tough environment. Cincinnati's got a great record at home. Love the way Emory Jones is playing so far for the Bearcats. They're averaging 239 yards per game on the ground. But Oklahoma will concentrate on that. They're going to take away the run, and I think that's going to put the focus on Jones throwing the ball and could have a couple of turnovers. I just think Oklahoma's the better team and capable of passing this road test here. I like the Sooners to go on the road and get the win.
And Phil, in Lawrence, we have a Jayhawks team. Looked a little sluggish on the road at Nevada last week, facing a BYU team that marched into Fayetteville and pulled a nice upset. They're 2 unbeaten teams, neither ranked, but a big matchup in Lawrence.
Yeah, 2 unbeaten teams. Defensively, Kansas has impressed me. They're only allowing 274 yards per game this year. Now, granted, they haven't taken on overwhelming offenses, but they are playing much better defensively. They've got Jalen Daniels at quarterback. And if you go back and look a little closer at the BYU game, they actually got outgained 424 to 281. So, I mean, it was a game where they were minus 143 yards, but ended up on the plus side of the scoreboard. I like Kansas at home in this one. I believe they have the quarterback edge. I know Keaton Slovis has a 6-1 ratio, but watching him in all 3 games, he hasn't blown me away. Jalen Daniels can blow you away. And last week they were in a letdown spot at Nevada. Tough situation. I think they're in a better spot at home. Energized home crowd. I like Kansas to win this one.
Another Big 12 newcomer, Central Florida. They get a huge test out of the gate here with Kansas State on the road, who just lost in heartbreaking fashion last week to Missouri, a 61-yard field goal from Harrison Mevis as the clock hit zeros. Phil, I mean, what do you expect out of this one? Is this a situation where Kansas State lets a game beat them twice, or do they bounce back and take care of business against UCF?
Chris Kleiman's still the head coach there?
Yes, that's a good point. That is a very good point.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to beat Kansas State twice with Kleiman as a head coach. He's outstanding. So they're going to be fired up at home off a loss. I love what Will Howard's doing so far this year. And, the big question was losing Deuce Vaughn. Giddens and Ward, I think, have looked good. Last week they had the 10-point lead a couple of times against Missouri, just came up short in that one. John Rice Plumlee probably not going to play for UCF, so that's a tough situation for them. I know Timmy McClain has experience from USF, but I got to go with Kansas State to circle the wagons, get this one at home, and get back on track. And I'm not ruling them out. They don't have a Big 12 loss yet. They still have that shot. If you're looking for somebody besides Oklahoma and Texas, I'm going to go with Kansas State as that team in the Big 12 this year.
And what Mountaineer fans have been dying to hear about, Phil. 2 weeks ago, you picked us to beat Duquesne by 39. We beat Duquesne by 39. Last week, you gave us the tilt in the backyard brawl versus Pitt. Of course, we came out on top. This week, a 3:30 kick in Morgantown, we're facing those Red Raiders that we haven't been able to beat since 2018 as a 6-point underdog. What do you see playing out in Morgantown?
Yeah, I'm actually bullish on West Virginia this week. You're looking at a team that gets Texas Tech has taken a long trip. And if you follow Texas Tech, the one thing they've struggled with is going on the road. Earlier this year, they went up to Wyoming, jumped out to a big lead, but then I thought Wyoming controlled the rest of the game, ended up winning that game outright. And I think it might be a similar situation here. They're just 4-17 straight up on the road. You're looking at a West Virginia team that's 14-5 straight up at home. I like West Virginia's offensive line. I like the run game, and I think if you can shrink the clock against Texas Tech, frustrate them, keep them off the field a little bit, like Wyoming did. And Wyoming in that game, by the way, if you watched it, was down to their number 3 and number 4 running backs at times, and even their number 5 running back at one point, yet they were still able to run the football for 171 yards on Wyoming. I think West Virginia establishes the run. I think Nico Marichal is a guy that can step in with the full practice and do a good job at the quarterback spot. And this is a West Virginia team that's gaining confidence by the week. Love what they did in the backyard brawl last week, and I've got them pulling the upset here and beating Texas Tech this week.
Wow. How about that, Mountaineer fans? So Phil's going with West Virginia 3 straight weeks here. So that's good news for Mountaineers. Phil, last thing before we get you out of here. Texas Tech, we know they like to go up tempo. They like to get as many snaps as possible. But what about the defensive side of the ball? Like what are the strengths of that unit and the weaknesses that West Virginia needs to try to exploit?
I think what they're going to have to be able to do is to establish the run, and that really is going to be the key in this game. And I believe West Virginia will be able to do it. I think Texas Tech likes to get after you. They like to send the extra blitzers and things like that. But if they can pop off a couple of big runs, slow down that box, and then Marichal's going to have to hit some passes to keep the defense honest. That's going to really be the key. Establish the run, hit a few passes to keep the defense honest, shrink the clock, and I think West Virginia takes Texas Tech out of their game.
Awesome, Phil. Thank you so much once again for joining us here on In the Gun. Phil Fridays, as Phil Steele will be joining us every Friday, previewing Big 12, Top 25, and, of course, the West Virginia Mountaineers. Phil, thank you so much, and enjoy your football weekend.
Thanks, Phil.
Hey, sounds great. Always a lot of fun talking football with you guys. Have a great weekend.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
For more West Virginia Mountaineer football content, be sure to follow us on Twitter @InTheGunPodcast.
All right. So again, Phil Steele, you can get his magazine at Books a Million and Barnes and Noble. Always a great time talking to him ahead of the college football weekend. Before we get into our last thing here, quick a word from our sponsor, Fortis, for roof performance and financial security guaranteed. Be sure to visit fortis.us.com, and also our friends at Toothman Ford. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. So Jed, we have a new batch of bets here for West Virginia, Texas Tech here from the ITG Sportsbook. What are the books saying? What are we going to be picking from?
Well, let's start with this. In each of these last 4 games, we've struggled mightily to get out of the gates with any kind of decent start. They've jumped on us.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They've had a lead out of the first quarter. I mean, anywhere from 21-3 to 17-3 early in the second quarter. So the first thing I'm going to ask is, will we be winning after the first quarter, or will we not?
Ooh, okay.
That's going to be critical.
I would say with a backup quarterback, I'm going to say no. West Virginia will be they can be tied, correct? Or no?
Tie goes to the house.
Okay. So I'll go Texas Tech leads after a quarter. It's going to take a little time, I think, for Nico to kind of settle in. Even though he did a really good job coming in last week, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot in the passing game. But I think it's going to take him a little time. Going to take Neal even maybe a little bit of time to kind of settle into the flow of the game with the new quarterback under center. So I'm going to say Texas Tech has the lead after one quarter of play.
Well, we are acting under the assumption, just based on the information we have, that
yes, that is true.
Garrett's out, but I'm not ruling one way or the other. If he could come out and start, he's going to come out and start. But either way, I think from a game planning standpoint, we recognize the importance of a solid start. And I think we're going to find a way to be a little more aggressive, even if Nico is behind center with getting all those snaps. I think we're going to find a way to be aggressive enough to get the early start, keep the crowd dialed in. And I think after 15 minutes, West Virginia will be winning. So now, interesting. 4th down attempts. A year ago, Joey McGuire, and he started this when he was at Baylor on staff with Matt Rule. Joey McGuire loves to roll the dice on 4th down. They attempted more 4th downs last year than one of the databases that I draw from is CFBstats.com. It goes back to 2008. Texas Tech attempted 52 4th downs last year, which was more than any Power 5, at least as far back as 2008 when that database starts. So they really rolled the dice on 4th down. There were 6 of 7 in the game against West Virginia last year on 4th down. This year, through 3 games, they've attempted 6 4th downs, 2 in each of the 3 games. Do they get back to what they were doing last year in this game? So let's say this: over under 4.5 4th down attempts by Texas Tech.
Wow, that's a really tough. That may be the hardest one you've came up with. I'm gonna go under, and I'm very nervous to do that because I feel like I'm asking for it at this point, but I'm going to go under. And the only reason I say that is because I think West Virginia is going to do a good job in their front 7 of winning on 1st down enough to where Texas Tech is going to get in some 2nd and longs, some 2nd and 8s, not very manageable situations heading into 3rd down. And I just think they're going to play a little behind the chains, not a lot. But I think if West Virginia can also dictate the tempo of this game, which we've talked a lot about this week, that's the theme of this whole game. They can dictate the tempo. I think it could kind of lean into their favor to where Texas Tech is not really willing to go for it on 4th down, especially if it's on their own side of the field. So I'm going to go under.
Okay. I think I'm going to go under as well. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's up 2-4. What I'm hoping is if the game unfolds the way we want and we get the early lead and put them in a trail position, they might be forced to do it a little more than they have recently this year. I just think it's the way those games have unfolded, the 3 that they've played. But it is strange to me that they didn't pick up where they left off when that served them so well last year. And they haven't been as aggressive. I think they're due to be a little more aggressive, but maybe not quite enough to get them to 5 4th down attempts for the over under 4.5. Okay, now rushing offense. We talked about this last week in the Pitt game. We both took the over 150. I didn't know how to handicap this one because West Virginia, despite the fact in multiple games against Texas Tech, we felt good about our running game going in. We knew we had to run the ball going in. So this isn't a new concept against Texas Tech. This isn't the first time we felt good about our running game we faced Texas Tech. This isn't the first time that we knew we had to run the ball against Texas Tech. Despite all that, in these 4 consecutive losses, we've averaged only 77 yards on the ground, knowing we had to run it, and a couple times feeling pretty good about how we could. Their interior defensive line in particular has really had a day against us. Now, Texas Tech this year defensively is allowing 143 on the ground per game. I'm probably going to go with that to handicap it. Let's say over under 142.5. West Virginia on the ground. Now, again, we feel pretty good about our run game. We feel pretty good about our O-line, but we were feeling pretty good about our run game going into Lubbock last year, and we couldn't run at all against these cats. They run that 2-4-5 defensive concept with those 2 big heavies on the interior. They get very active, chopping the front up with those two interior backers. I think we're going to find a way to our zone concepts to climb to the second level and make enough plays, lean on them to pull the over, especially irrespective of how you look at it. Let's look at it. If Garrett's in the game, he's in the game because he can run. That means he's healthy enough to run. If Nico's in the game, that means irrespective of how many snaps he's getting with the ones this week, you're still going to want to establish the run to help Nico. So either way, I think the recipe requires us to effectively run the football to have success in this game. I'm going to go with over 142.5. What say you?
I was going to go under for the longest time, and then you start spilling out those points. But you know what? Just for the fact of keeping it a little interesting here, I will go with the under. Okay. But to note, Tarleton State last week, again, it was a blowout loss, whatever. But they did rush for 145 against Texas Tech. So take that for what you will. It may not mean anything. Oregon and Wyoming also had a fair amount of success running the ball against Texas Tech. But I think if we don't see Garrett Green, you're potentially losing anywhere from 20 to 40 to maybe even 60 yards rushing. Who knows? But Nico Marchiol, obviously, he can run the ball as well. I just think if that is what happens and the game plan is Nico starts, I think they actually may be a little bit more conservative with the quarterback run game, because if you get Nico hurt, then you're down to a true freshman quarterback and then a bunch of walk-ons. So they're going to be playing it safe, I think, if that is the case and Garrett can't play. So I'll go with the under on that.
Fair enough. That makes sense. That was a difficult one to handicap. I was just trying to wrap my head around what the fair number might be, because we have really struggled. We've had barely 3 yards of carry against these guys.
Yeah.
And that's when you can't run the football effectively. We talked about this in our preview yesterday. People like to talk about the fact that West Virginia was 2-0 against Patrick Mahomes. Well, yeah, Gibby dialed some things up to confuse him. But at the same time, in both those wins over Patrick Mahomes, we ran for 300 yards.
That is insane.
Like enough people are talking about that.
Yeah.
So you're going to win a lot of games when you run for those types of yardage totals.
Absolutely. So that is the key to success in this one, obviously, for West Virginia, as it is pretty much every week. Run the damn football and do it with success early and often. Again, as Jed just mentioned, the preview. If you haven't checked it out yet, go to our YouTube page at In the Gun Podcast. And Wes, Owen, and Jed, they all talk about West Virginia, Texas Tech. They break down both sides of the ball. And they even get into a little X and O's this week, which I thought was a little fun. Owen kind of diving into the stretch play. That was a lot of fun. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go check that out. Also, we're going to do something new. If you are a loyal listener and you check out all of our episodes, we do weekly picks. You can now be a part of those picks. And if you go 4 for 4, I believe we're going to give you an Owen Schmidt signed rookie card. I think that's what we agreed upon the other night. So if you go 4 for 4, yeah, we're going to start off with that. And
look for our Twitter account. I'm going to put that link. It's already on there, actually. Go to the Twitter account. You'll see the link. It's a Google poll. So you just enter your email, your name, and you'll be able to do this each week. Try and beat us with our picks. It'll be fun. A little interactive thing with the listeners.
Yeah, and if you're trying to be Jed, it won't take you too much because he's sitting down there at the bottom. But That's okay. Maybe he comes back with the first place finish this week and catches some ground. So that'll do it for us here today. That's the signal caller, Jed Drenning. I'm Schuyler Callihan. We thank you guys for watching. Again, Phil Steele every Friday, and the preview is up. We've got some more stuff coming up. Monday we'll be back to recap the game and kick off TCU week with Big Daddy. And that'll do it for us here today. So the one thing that we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WV football podcast. You've been in the gun.